is the Orange Zone, sponsored by Apex Entertainment.
So to start, just obviously big news today for Syracuse in the transfer portal QB battle. What do you think Syracuse liked from Steve Angeli?
I think it's the fact that he's been in school for, the 3+ years and has experience at Notre Dame. He's a little bit more mature. He's gone through the process of learning a playbook and being in that playbook and preparing as if he was going to start, even though he didn't start. And then he was also thrown into some big situations, like in the college football semifinals against Penn State. He came in and went 6 for 7 in that game, led a pretty critical drive that ended up helping them win. So he's been in pressure packed situations and done it kind of on the fly, which is obviously more difficult than when you're the full-time starter and you're preparing and all of that, which tells you he's already used to, sort of game planning and his own personal preparation as the starter. But I really think it's the maturity. It's the fact that, he's been out of high school for several years. He's got some experience. There's familiarity there because he was coached by Nunzio Campanelli's brother in high school. I think all of those things just kind of made sense with Syracuse where they are with the quarterback room.
Yeah, sort of to build off of that Bergen Catholic, Vito Campanelli, Nunzio Campanelli connection. How much do you think that sort of helped foster this commitment?
It's a natural connection. And whenever you have transfer portal situations, you always look for those natural connections, whether it's one of the assistants on staff recruited someone out of high school, whether there's a connection like there is here with the Campanellis, you're always looking for where those relationships match. And that is sort of what leads you to which schools might make sense for a certain prospect. And this just made sense. Syracuse was looking to add a quarterback to its quarterback room. They wanted someone who had that maturity and that experience. And the fact that there's a connection here with Syracuse's quarterback coach, it just made perfect sense. And then it's also right in Fran Brown's wheelhouse in terms of New Jersey recruiting.
Yeah, definitely. Now, in your eyes, how does this kind of shape the Syracuse quarterback room headed into the fall? Obviously, Fran said what he said about Rickie Collins in the spring, but is that a whole different ballgame now?
Yeah, I don't think you bring in a guy like Angeli expecting it to, I don't think he's coming in expecting to be the backup and that's just a foregone conclusion. Now, Rickie won the job in the spring, and obviously that says something about the type of player he is. But I think you're going to go into fall camp and there's going to be an expectation that it's going to be a quarterback battle and it's going to be open. Now, when you're at a Power 4 school, I think regardless of how good you are as a quarterback, you should always expect that they're trying to bring in as many talented quarterbacks as they can. So from Rickie Collins' perspective, I can't imagine this caught him off guard too much. And I have to imagine just the way that Fran Brown operates, he was probably pretty transparent with Rickie Collins about the fact that they were going after another quarterback and they could bring in someone who has the potential to win them games as a starter.
Yeah, in your eyes, do you think it was sort of a misstep by Fran to name Collins starter so early? I mean, like you said, I have to imagine he's being pretty transparent throughout this process with all guys involved. But do you think that was a little premature?
You can certainly make that argument. I think where you're at right now is when that announcement was made, that's based on who was on the roster. You also didn't know at that point that Rickie was going to get hurt before the spring game, so you've got an injury issue there. And then you lost a guy like Michael Johnson Jr. To the transfer portal, and then a guy like Steve Angeli becomes available. So none of those things had happened yet when he made that decision. And I also understand the thought process behind making that decision early is you kind of want to say, this is our guy. He's getting all the reps with the ones. That's the way that we're operating moving forward. But sometimes circumstances change. So is that going to be the case if he's in a similar situation in the future? Would he pause Coach Brown on that and not make that declaration? I don't know. I think you do what you feel is best at that moment. And, it works out the way it works out. But ultimately, Fran's culture, I think, will prevent any ill will there among the quarterback room.
And then back to Angeli himself, just kind of to wrap it up here. How do you see him sort of slotting into Jeff Nixon's offense, right? Last year, you had a guy like Kyle McCord, who was, they've said it so many times, basically another coach out there on the field, really sort of traditional pocket passer, didn't move much. How do you see Angeli sort of slotting into what Jeff Nixon and Nunzio Campanelli did last year?
Similar. I think they can kind of run the offense in a similar way in that give him a lot of freedom. And because he's got that maturity and I believe that they think he's got that processing ability similar to what Kyle McCord did to allow him to make adjustments at the line of scrimmage and change in and out of plays and call audibles, things of that nature. And then he's got that accuracy as well that we saw from Kyle McCord and the way he was able to pinpoint certain passes. He just doesn't have as much experience as what Kyle McCord did. We know obviously he started a bunch of games at Ohio State and was very successful there. So there's a little bit more of a question mark around Angeli and can he be the full-time starter and how does he react to that? But you see a lot of similarities in terms of playing style, processing, football IQ in Angeli compared to what Kyle McCord was.
And I know you never know these days in the age of the transfer portal, everything's so volatile. So we'll see with Rickie Collins and Jakari Williams. Do you expect this to have any trickle down effect for a guy like Jakari, who maybe is like, how am I going to play here now if these two guys are here for a long time? Or is it sort of just a wait and see game?
It definitely is a wait and see game. Now, there's only a few more days before the transfer portal closes in this window, which is a good thing. And then because it's been open for a while and there's been a lot of moving pieces, there aren't a lot of places with quarterback openings. So I'm not sure if someone like Jakari leaves now, unless he goes down a level or goes to FCS or something like that, that he's going to find a spot where there is a starting spot really available for him. But that being said, I haven't heard anything either way. But again, I have to imagine that there's been open lines of communication with the coaching staff. And it's one of those things that nothing should surprise you with the transfer portal, as we've learned from Trevor Pena and Murad Watson and other guys this season.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Mike McAllister from 24/7 Sports, joining us, giving some insight on Syracuse football, grabbing Steve Angeli from former Notre Dame quarterback. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.